What counts is how we bring people together and how we get them to speak and to think. So the questions we ask. And what matters is how we show up in the space. If I judge them because they're not creative enough and not fast enough and not funny enough, they will feel that. What we have to do as facilitators is to be there to hold the space for the room and to be okay with everything that shows up.
Welcome back to the Humble Mind podcast. It's good to be back. My guest today has a PhD in behavioral economics. She's lived across the world, worked in many beautiful, diverse, different countries like Namibia, Burkina Faso, Vietnam, and now she finds herself in Amsterdam. And at some point in the middle of it all, she realized her true calling, which is facilitation. Now she's run one of the most consistent podcasts on facilitation on that topic in the world, over 300 consecutive weekly episodes since 2019. How's that? She also runs an agency doing leadership training for multinational teams and leaders across cultures and languages. And she recently did something brave. She rebranded everything, a word that many people are uncomfortable. And that word is unprofessionalism. That's what we're going to dive into today. We connected on Substack or through Substack, and I'm feeling really excited and bullish about what's going on in Substack because there's a beautiful kind of a community essence there and a lot of really independent, interesting thinkers, of which you are one. And it seems to be an interesting place right now. I'm thankful to that platform to kind of allow some of these kinds of conversations to happen. I'd love to know a bit more about, when we spoke, that word came up, unprofessionalism. I just love that. And I'd love to kind of unpack that on what that word means to you and how you've been on a particular journey to lead to the point where you've now focused things on that, focused what you do on that, what it was before, how it became that.
The word actually came up having drinks with an old friend of mine on the balcony. And we're speaking about our imposter syndromes as entrepreneurs. And I confessed how unprofessional I felt very often. Always kind of winging it, always running with 80% being good enough, and being self-critical. And he bursted out in laughing and looked at me and was like, Myriam, well, the last word that would come up in my mind looking at you is unprofessional. Because on the outside, everything looks so perfect. I love design. I invest in design. I'm very consistent. I build my brand, as you say, every week since 19, I published a podcast episode, right? And that's what we define as professionals, what we see, the consistency, the pitch perfect. And somehow I couldn't, since that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about what it actually is, this professionalism. And I realized that professionalism is actually something like a mask behind which we hide our imposter syndrome. Right? Everything with which we pretend to have it all together. And then, I came up with unprofessionalism as a provocation. I think the more fitting title would be post-professionalism. Because I'm not referring to lack of quality or lack of standards or coming late or not taking our work seriously. But I'm referring to bringing the humanness back to work. And I think the more I look around and look for it, I see how it's absolutely in the way of connection, of human to human connection, because the more we are perfect, the more we make ourselves almost untouchable and replaceable, because we're all Professional is such a tight thing that if we apply it, we only basically copy each other in what we're doing. And then all the humanness, all the creativity, all the quirkiness, everything kind of gets lost. Yeah. I stop here and let you make that sense of it. No.
Yeah. No, beautiful. And have you found that there's a certain type of reaction that you get if you use that word in a boardroom, or perhaps in a client presentation, or something that you do, because you run these workshops and you run these, what might be called these leadership development programs with people around the world. And in those kinds of programs, there's always an outcome that somebody's looking for, that somebody's paying for, which makes sense. That's fine. They want to be able to improve something, reduce something, make something better in their business, which ultimately shows up in front of customers. So the intention is clear. But in having the curiosity to move things into a larger picture, sometimes that means then that, the conversation about outcomes, what we're going to do, what you're going to get in these next 90 minutes, becomes different, or it becomes harder to have. How do you find you have that kind of conversation now that you're wanting to move beyond just here's a workshop, here's what we're going to do, thanks very much?
Interesting. So I think I have not rebranded my company name. So my company name is the workshops.work.
Yep. I love the name, by the way. It's great.
And I would not lead with unprofessionalism. So what we do with the agency work, what we do in the leadership trainings is reflects the philosophy of unprofessionalism, where we put connection over content, where we say that humans cannot learn if their nervous system is activated. So we first have to create a sense of safety, we have to relax, we have to create connection, curiosity, and then we are open to learn together, and to ask questions, admit mistakes and all of that. So for a client, I wouldn't say, hey, I have a workshop on unprofessionalism. Right? Let's find out how to be unprofessional together. Yeah. I think we do this through the back door, maybe. And I think that's okay. Because I think unprofessional is still, for many in the corporate world, a career suicide to have that label.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying with the podcast is to find role models who have dared to do things differently, to write their own script, to say, okay, professionalism is something that has been defined at some point, and it doesn't mean that we have to follow these unwritten rules, because professionalism, the rules of professionalism are usually unwritten, out of the legacy, usually defined by middle-aged white men decades ago, and not applying to the majority of employees who are not middle-aged and white and male. Right? So somehow everyone is complying to something that doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah.
And it's, when we think about it, it's ridiculous. So many people don't, and I interviewed a lady on the podcast, Jermaine, and she speaks about questioning the board's or the leadership's decision and always being called out as the difficult one. But standing her ground and saying, why would we do that? It doesn't make sense. And then questioning it, and then being successful despite her being difficult. Potentially, if a man would ask the same questions, it would be totally valid and not difficult, maybe courageous. So what I'm trying to say actually is also that I think unprofessionalism as a construct or topic is very multifaceted, because unprofessionalism is also privilege. So for some, it's easier to break the rules than for others.
It's true.
For some, it has more risk than for others.
I suppose also in the way that you're having that conversation, even if you're not leading with it, like you said, but introducing it as an idea, is ultimately to find a way, not just to be unprofessional, but really to find a way to show up as a better professional, really, right? Because it's about embodying perhaps some other aspects, paying attention to other types of skills, other areas of the shadow, so that there's a more complete person or more complete picture who can then show up properly in who they are, how they support their teammates, how they fulfill their role, in their family, in their society, in their community. So that, I suppose that's part of really what you're doing as well. And maybe sometimes what you need to remind people about, that, it's not just about breaking the rules, but breaking the wrong ones and following the right ones.
Yeah, good one. Because professionalism, as in its origin, it comes from professing a vow. Professing a vow in public that we will devote ourselves to the quality, to master our craft in service of the public or our clients. And everything that we see, what seems like professionalism, is mostly just professing a vow for quality in public. That is cheap talk, because nobody can actually control it. It's just facade.
Yeah. How well do you think this message is working? Because I'm fascinated with the world of work, and the kinds of clients and the kind of the people in my orbit, the organizations I work with, is quite a variation of different kinds of individuals and the temperaments that they have, but also just different sizes and scales of businesses that I work with. And there's a big variation. There's a lot of people and leaders who are really open to these kinds of conversations. And then there's still a kind of a class of leaders and even managers who, it's not that they're not into it. It's just that I just don't have time for this. Or there's kind of like, can we get to the point where, okay, what do we pay? What do we get? Let's get on with it, kind of thing. I'm fascinated to hear like what is your kind of take on the world of work kind of as it is, and where your work comes in, because you kind of bring in these tools in particular, with a kind of a blend of some of the behavioral science and the facilitation, and kind of looking at different ways of driving engagement and collaboration and all of those things. I kind of want to see, or hear your take on the world into which you enter.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think the majority of the people that we see in our workshops are overwhelmed. They are tired of the reorganizations, the constant catching up, the workload, it's just too much. And then the invitation to just be a little bit human for a moment brings this collective sigh into the rooms. So it's like a mini holiday for themselves for the next 3 hours, I don't have to be someone. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to have it together. If I'm hungry, I can just eat in front of the camera. And if I'm tired of the camera, I can just turn it off without immediately having someone. No, you have to have your camera on. So I think there is a gratitude for that. What we hear from them is the fear of upper management, the leaders who don't have time, who want to maximize, who are after the results, who pass on feedback from above. And to me, it sounds as if everyone's nervous system is just in overload, and that most organizations are driven by fear instead of by vision. And I do feel with most of the leaders and managers, because it's fascinating how teams are quickly in the judgment of the toxic leader. And every second leader is now considered a narcissist. We are so quick with our judgments. But then looking behind the scenes and seeing what they're confronted with the pressure from their managers and the uncertainty of what's going around and trying to handle it all and never be good enough and reading a million leadership books and they all say something different. Right? And when we're scared, when we're uncertain, what do? We put on our armor and we pretend as if we have it together. And that's, for me, the professional mask. If I feel attacked by a question because either I just didn't sleep enough, or maybe I am cross at my manager because they didn't give me the answers and now I'm asked the same question. It takes something to say, oh, it's a good question, I wish I knew. Or to say, oh, what kind of question is that? We don't have time for that.
Yeah, big difference. Yeah.
Because the first one is just more, it's riskier. Somehow. I mean, everyone, in theory, we know that everyone would be grateful. In practice, it's scary.
So is there something you might say to, maybe a senior leader who might be listening to our conversation, who might say, well, I hear you and I feel that way and you're right. But if everybody said that and everybody kind of took their foot off the gas, then nothing would get done. Is there a sort of a way to reply to that?
Whether this is an assumption. So nothing gets done. So I wonder which risk is higher, whether everyone is running in the wrong direction and gets lots of stuff done, or whether we pause for a minute and then run in the right direction. And I think the cost of burnout, the cost of silent quitting and all of these things, they're enormous. And one of my podcast guests once said that the cost of an ineffective meeting are more meetings.
Brilliant.
Right? So we all know these meetings where everyone sits in. 80% of the people who sit in the meeting are replying to some other emails, doing multitasking, or zone out daydream, right? Which is absolutely human. Then something gets decided, of course, because that's what meetings are for. People don't pay attention. Then the meeting is over. And what happens is the one-on-one alignment, either to complain about the decision that has been made or about what we didn't follow because we didn't pay attention or any other thing. And that's the real cost. So I do understand that it sounds as if it's touchy-feely and takes too much time. And I think it's time well invested.
Yeah. I mean, you've had these kinds of conversations with some of your clients, Lufthansa, Fidelity, European Investment Bank. You've been in the room with these guys. And I suppose most of the time it is guys. And I'm always, fascinated with the one of the things that I love about the art of facilitating a room is that it puts everybody in the same level. Everyone is on the, we can take all the titles, all of the kind of the leadership and the rank off if you do it right. And we're all peers in one space. And I think for a lot of people, it can be really quite confronting when you do that, because it's like, whoa, now you're forcing me to take that jacket off, take all those things that I normally would have around me in order to assume my position of seniority. And now you're having this conversation with me. when you are in the room and creating that space with, let's say, some of the kind of caliber of leaders from some of the clients I've just mentioned, how do you create that kind of space so that it is confronting enough for them to take that situation and that kind of statement you just said seriously, but also not enough where they don't switch off and go, oh, okay, I'll just sit through the rest of this and turn off.
Yeah. And I wish I could say that there's a magic formula.
Of course, yeah.
I think it really depends on the people that are sitting in the room, on the client, on the work we've done before. And I've had beautiful examples where I would sit in a room full of directors and offer them some M&Ms to create kind of some sort of, okay, this is different.
Like
Put them in a circle. They will feel awkward. Doing an awkward check-in question. And they realize, okay, this is different from usually. And they play along. I think it has to do with the facilitators self-confidence and confidence in the process. I think if we believe, usually everyone plays along if we invite them to do something. It has very rarely happened that someone would say, I'm not doing that. And usually I explain why I would do something. Okay, we'll start with a little warm-up to get into the space or to warm up our vocal cords or to explore why we're actually here. I think one of the most beautiful examples was a workshop I hosted for two teams that really struggled, of two different companies that had to work together. And they were going through a lot of finger pointing, and because the project wasn't running well, and of course it was the fault of the other team, the other company. And we started with small groups of 3. How is it to be you in this project? And it was beautiful because they realized that they're all complaining about the same things. They all have the same issues. And it's not the other one's fault. So I think what helps is to remind them of their shared humanity. This usually helps to bring everyone at the same level. At the same time, I have been in a workshop where the boss of one of those luxury brands, traditional male-dominated luxury brands, was leaning back with crossed arms, and it was just unapproachable. It was an online session. I started with small breakout groups, and I got a text message from my direct client. She was like, stop, we have to stop that. This is too touchy-feely. He doesn't want that. And I think it was a question, who are you and why are you here today? And then looking back, I know exactly what went wrong back then. So I think he was not ready for this, as you said, the same level. Yeah. The democratization of the room. And before that, I had one-on-one calls with every participant in the group. And he was the only one who brought his 2 assistants to the call. So we could not connect one-on-one. And back then I thought, it will be fine, shall be good enough. But it wasn't. So he was unable to lower his guard. And then, with the check-in thought, we're not moving fast enough. I came here for results. Long answer for a short question.
No, that's great. Yeah. And it shows the real importance of being able to build rapport, not just with the room, but with the individuals, whether that is done first or whether that is done, in the beginning in some way, because really what you're doing is establishing trust. And trust is that simple thing that it kind of takes a while it kind of takes a different course for each person depending on what they're there for, or like you said, the confidence they have in the process.
Yeah, 100%. And usually it's the boss who needs to trust that the process is leading to the results that they have paid for. And the groups needs to trust that they're safe to share their opinions and to be themselves and to contribute.
And to disagree as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe most importantly.
Now, you're not just a facilitator, but, you're also an entrepreneur. You're also, you ran an agency, a community. And then the pandemic kind of shut down what you were doing. Do you want to maybe tell us a bit about the trajectory of that story as you were going, what you realized along the way, and kind of how it's led to really what you're doing now?
Yeah. I started off as a freelance facilitator. I think I started in 2018. Before that, I worked for a university. I always worked for universities before that. So I was really new to this field and was lucky to find big and good clients from the beginning. So I was facilitating workshops. I facilitated and coordinated the summer school of the European Investment Bank. And all the workshops were cancelled. And I found myself with a very small project that remained with the EIB. We brought the summer school online. And I had to learn how to do the online thing. And I had to reinvent myself. And that led to the organization of a festival that I called Never Done Before. So it was 2020. I invited my podcast guests. I invited my podcast guests to join me on a crazy passion project because I had nothing else to do with my time. To join me on a festival. And the only condition was that they had to do something they've never done before. And in 2020 online in facilitation, this was a hit. Luckily, so it did work out. And the festival turned into a community because we created something. And I think this is maybe also the origin of unprofessionalism. To invite expert facilitators to do something for the first time in front of a paying audience is not the traditional professional side of us that we will show. Yeah. But it's something that you can do with facilitators. Right? That's the beauty of the profession. And so I built the community and grew it. I think at its high, we had 200 members from 40 different countries.
Wow.
Daringly experimenting with workshop techniques and turning the standards upside down.
Oh man, where was I? Awesome.
Yeah, that was really fun. Until I think at some point, the post-pandemic was over. People are going back to in-person. At some point, I thought, okay, so have we now done everything? Have we now done everything? But what another opportunity opened. A client reached out. So I was recommended to a client who was looking for facilitators who would be able to deliver their training workshops in 3 or 4 different languages. And someone recommended me because of my network of facilitators. And with the 40 nationalities within NDB, it was easy for me to find the facilitators capable enough to deliver certain workshops. And this then turned into a business. So I scaled the number of workshops for that client, was recommended to another client, and grew the offer to 10 different languages.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And at some point I realized that I am earning 80% of my income with clients that are consuming 20% of my time. So it was time to close the community and focus on agency.
How did that feel to close the community? Because, I would imagine similar for me, for you, the real human value is all there. But then you balance that with the fact that it's taking so much time and it's not really paying for itself on paper. What was that process like?
It took me a while to give myself permission to do that. To think, okay, I'm not letting anyone down. It doesn't mean that I don't value the people or what we've done. And it was so we grieved together as community. So I announced it, I think, in June, and we would close it in December. So we had then really all these months to collectively see, okay, what have we learned? Where do we want to go? How can they continue without me? In whatever shape and form. And I think they met last year in France and will meet this year in Italy. So Amazing. The core group is still connected and still working together. And also there are 15, I think, that are still working with me in the agency.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was difficult, and it was a relief. At the end, it was a relief. Yeah, not to see every individual facilitator as a potential client.
Yes.
Not being able to actually be the consumer of workshops, the consumer of community, being held by community, but always having the business hat on.
I suppose the community always finds a way, especially if it is comprised of the right people, to stay together, regardless of if there's a platform or an email list to keep it together, or whatever that is. I've seen that with my own community, with Humble Mind. I've made some changes now to the community kind of forum and the space where it is, and moving that more onto Substack, and just changing the cadence a little bit. And people are still engaged, so I think it's always a testament to just having the right people, and the right people who want to support you and get you and your vibe, but they're also there for themselves, and they want to show up, and they're still curious, they're still interested and finding their own way to keep it alive in their own way.
Yeah. So for me, community means that they might have joined because of me or the community builder in general, but usually they get value from each other. And for me, this makes community. Okay? That they find connections, they find like-minded people, they start projects with each other and find inspiration from each other.
That's it.
And that's why they will stay and pay, because my content, they could have listened to the podcast. I mean, there's more content. If they really want to listen to me speaking, there's more than enough for a lifetime. That's not what they're paying for. What they're paying for is the people that with my content and my personality am attracting.
Yes.
And then are more likely to also be their people.
Yeah, precisely. They're paying for access to each other, really, and to be surrounded by that. Yeah, which is the beauty of it. Yeah. How do you keep yourself engaged in kind of whether it's a personal practice, whether it's finding new creative ways in or outside of what you do in your work, to kind of keep it fresh and to keep yourself showing up in the best way? Because facilitation is it's that kind of thing which is a blessing and a curse, right? Where you show up on a day and wow, everything just goes perfectly, and you were on fire and your memory was good and everyone was receptive to what you had. Then of course there's a day where none of it works out. Like, is there something that you do or that is something you work on to kind of keep yourself inspired, whether it's your body, your mind, your spirit?
Interesting. Yes, I have lots of thoughts about that. One is I don't do much facilitation work anymore. So, which doesn't mean that I don't keep myself inspired. So I really focus on the entrepreneurial side of building and keeping that intact and making sure that my associates, so this little community and my clients are happy and get what they paid for. And focus on the creative side, which is the podcast and hopefully an Unprofessionalism book. And what I found, what inspires me most and gives me most energy and ideas to move on and to build a business, grow a business, is actually less the content trainings and more the inner work. I think it's something that we totally underestimate. I think the community of facilitators maybe underestimates that less. But still, there are only that many methods that we need to learn. I think myself and all the facilitation work that I used, maybe there are 2 handful of methods that I've used. And because nobody cares about the method. I believe that nobody cares whether we use Lego or Playmobil or just bricks or pens and paper or nothing of that. What counts is how we bring people together and how we get them to speak and to think. So the questions we ask. And what matters is how we show up in the space. If I get triggered by every second participant because one reminds me of my mom, the other of my dad, of my older brother, or my former boss, and I get triggered the shit out of me, they will feel that. If I judge them because they're not creative enough and not fast enough and not funny enough, they will feel that. So I think
totally.
Right? Yeah. What we have to do as facilitators is to work on ourselves, to calm our inner child, to be there to hold the space for the room and to be okay with everything that shows up. And for that, I've done a lot of meditation, vipassana. I try to do it once per year. Plant medicine retreats, maybe one of the most healing and powerful things I've ever done. Hypnotherapy. I worked with Mike Parker, who has beautiful work, and Paula Short, who does stuff that is the closest to plant medicine without any substance.
Wow.
So I really believe in that. Nonviolent communication, radical honesty. Parts work, whatever it is to heal our own wounds.
I always kind of come back to this idea of like willingness. It's something I'm writing a lot about, where part of it is maybe some courage. Part of it is the confidence, like we were saying earlier, confidence in the process, confidence perhaps in the person leading it. But ultimately there is a kind of a dial inside, a skill maybe even, to be willing and to try and to experiment and to be open and to, I mean, it's kind of like a definition of curiosity, to be able to play and experiment without insisting on the outcome. Because we can't be curious if we think we know what we're trying to aim for. So, but with that, you've still got to be willing. You've still got to give it a go, and to not just give it a go as in like all right, but, do what Master Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. You still got to be 100% willing. And there's a real kind of beauty in that, but a real superpower in a sense of willingness, or willpower. That's why I love the word willpower, because it's the will, but there's a power behind it too, because you're sort of committing yourself to something that is probably difficult to commit to, but you're doing it anyway. And it's a wonderful way to think about showing up.
Yeah. I like that. Willingness. Also the willingness to fail.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So to own it.
Which is what will happen. You're guaranteed that will happen along the way, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Who said that if we haven't failed, we haven't tried hard enough.
Yeah.
And usually the person, the higher, what was it? The most successful person in the room is usually the person who has failed most often.
A different way to I'm a big fan of Sting, and I was watching an interview with him and his guitarist Dominic Miller, and he was saying, when you're practicing, if it sounds good, you're doing it wrong. And I love that, when you're rehearsing and it wow, that sounds good. It's like, no, you're actually not practicing right. And there's a difference between, practicing and then working or performing in that sense. The whole point of practice is for it to be messy and for you to try new things. And it shouldn't sound good. It shouldn't be polished. It shouldn't be perfect. You've got to rather use that space as a space to kind of allow the messy part of all the creativity to come out. Because if it sounds good, then that's not you practicing hard enough, I suppose. So it's a different way to see that same principle in a way.
Thank you. I think I needed to hear that.
Yeah, it's great.
I recently realized last week, actually, fell into a hole when I listened back to some of the podcasts that I recorded on unprofessionalism. I was so frustrated with myself that I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't hold space well enough and listen well enough. And I didn't steer in the right direction. And then realizing that, I rebranded. It's something new. There is no subject matter expert in unprofessionalism, and I'm still learning. So, maybe a podcast is also a kind of rehearsal, right? Every time it's different.
It's a workbench.
Cannot control it.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You've got. I remember. I think I heard it right in our last conversation that you're looking at potentially writing a book around this concept. So what's kind of on your desk right now of things you're looking at, you're experimenting with?
I am delivering my first keynote on unprofessionalism on Tuesday.
Awesome.
And how ironic, I think I've never spent more time in preparing something than this speech.
Wow.
And I think it's, I love taking the time for it because it's a very creative process. And after having put the second draft of a book into trash.
Wow.
So the last draft that I trashed, I worked on for a year. I wanted to write a choose your own adventure book, a business novel in a choose your own adventure format, which is brilliant, I think, but I failed, lacked the brilliance. So I want to give it another try. And so the unprofessionalism book is still inside of me. Yeah.
Awesome. That's exciting. Well, I hope that when it's ready, you'll come back and we'll have something in honor of your new book and the next chapter of your story, and we'll have a podcast to maybe launch it and do that together. I've really enjoyed our conversation and learning from you and listening to you. I really enjoy your energy as well. There's a lovely calmness about you, and I think that's probably what others see in you and how you do your work. So much of what we do is nonverbal. So I think that comes through in the right way. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you for, creating the space and for your thoughtful questions. Made me think.
Beautiful. Come back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Humble Mind. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're curious to take a look at our community, if you're not a member, you're missing out. Make sure you head to humblemind.co to check out more and to see what we're up to. I look forward to seeing you there. Until next time.